Hi, I'm Sarah Bentley Pearson, and I live here in Atlanta. And because I'm not from Atlanta, I created a list called Sarah's List after realizing how many wonderful people I have met that I wanted to create a podcast to share with you all the great people that I have met throughout the Southeast. There are so many talented people here, and I feel like Atlanta is really, or the Southeast in general, is really an innovator. And I hope that you will enjoy all my interesting, diverse guests that I'm going to bring throughout the years.
David, how are you?
Hi, Sarah. I'm doing fine. It's 8:38 in the morning here.
You look so nice and put together. Thank you. I'm usually
Thank you.
in my sweats in the morning after I do the kids to school. Well, anyway, we all came to decide to do this because we thought, number one, what you do is so interesting and people love to hear about astrology. It's always fascinating to people, but also that you live in China and everything that's happened with COVID. People are so interested about what it's like to be in China and live in China. And you and I had a session like, I don't know, a year and a half ago when it just started. But are things more back to normal there?
Well, things have been back to normal here pretty much since June of 2020.
Oh, wow.
The difficult period was the first quarter of 2020, and I went through a lockdown here in Beijing, and it was quite an experience, and actually impressive in a lot of ways in terms of how people here, at least in Beijing, all I can go is by my experience, were very cooperative with each other and very supportive of each other. That was most impressive. It was in the dead of winter. Beijing's very cold. And during the lockdown, you have every neighborhood, every community is locked down, and there are guards, sometimes neighborhood officials who make sure that no one is coming and going that shouldn't be coming and going. But they had set up a very effective system. All I can tell you is it worked really well. And the attitude here was basically, let's do the best we can and see how this works out. And it's worked out really well here. The numbers here are just unbelievable. And I know a lot of people in the West think that the numbers are not real, but trust me, the numbers are real. I live here, and I can tell you that focusing on science and numbers and mathematics is a lot of what informs the decision making in this society. From the neighborhood levels to the very top.
It's kind of a lot different here. Things have,
I know.
are going in and out. But I don't, I'm over the subject of COVID, so I'm not wanting to discuss all that. But I just wanted to hear, what it was like for you to be there. So
it's back to normal now. I mean, we all wear masks, and I can just tell you this part because people, Chinese people know a lot about America, but Americans don't know much about China. And on your phone, whenever you're going to go into a mall or a store, you scan an app on WeChat, and that app will automatically show whether or not you've been reported as having any abnormal health conditions, wherever you have, if you've traveled to a zone that is certainly a hot spot right now, it'll tell. Masks are mandatory. You have temperature checks when you come through in a business or any public place. So you've got a lot of backup. I mean, and there's testing here and the vaccine, everybody's had, the vaccine and the booster and all of that. So I'm just saying it's worked here. And, every country has its own process.
right. Americans won't go for all that.
I know, but here it's just accepted.
Right.
You go through it just like you would, if you're getting your driver's license checked. If if the police have a license check or something on the highway and everybody has to go through and get checked for whatever reason. It's just like that.
Right. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, because it makes life a lot happier when you can move a little freely. Well, I read your bio. I don't know if you got a chance to look over some of the things that I sent you, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit. Well, first I'll just talk about how we met. I met you, I think, about almost 20 years ago through a friend referred me to come and see you at your office, and I did so. And I'm thinking back at some of the things you told me from the very beginning, and I just found the way you spoke to me and the things that you said back then have been really useful for me. It's almost the way you do your work feels very methodical, and it doesn't feel like, oh, this is going to happen in your future, like like some people would think that people who do what you do are like just frog. It seems very mathematical based on my personality, how you just how you forecasted or helped guide me for my future. And I remember some of the things that you said to me, when I get in my head that I should get physical, that I should, get up, do something, not sit in it. And that's been so useful for me. I've become like a crazy, like cleaner and organizer, but I find when I'm in my head, I get a lot done. And then you told me that my success in business would come through meeting people and friendships and how I interacted with people, rather than being the type of person that would get down and maybe cold call or do it that way, that wouldn't work for me, that it was through friends. And then you helped me pick my son's birth date because I had a scheduled C-section. And
Sure.
He is the love of my life. And who knows if the birthday necessarily had anything to do with that, but that was really cool. And then the last thing, I wanted to just mention was not to get too personal, but I was under a lot of stress when I was about to have Pearson, and was feeling a lot of sadness. And you had me picture if I were in the woods alone as a woman, and like my husband had died in war or something, and that I just could kind of get that female energy. And it was so cool. And I'm kind of going ahead, but I wanted to just bring my personal side into it before we went through your process and talking about what you're teaching in China versus, what the American version of astrology and all of that is. But I love what you do. So that's why I wanted to say that. And then I didn't realize you'd been doing this since the 70s.
That's right. This year makes 52 years of study.
Wow.
And 46 years of practice.
And you said that you had gone to college for journalism, but I'm always curious.
2 years, and I dropped out.
Yeah, but I'm always curious to hear about people's path. And was this something that somebody had influenced you as a child, or you sort of felt? Do you have an intuitive nature which drew you more into astrology, or was it just astrology in general? In other words, was this a gift that was in you from a young age, or how did that come about?
I was certainly not aware of any gift. I have to say that. I just found astrology fascinating. I was certainly someone interested in things that you might call spiritual. At the time that I began to study astrology, I was practicing yoga, and I was 19 years old. In fact, it was March 1970 when I started reading any serious astrology books. But it was my meditation teacher and his wife that loaned me some astrology text, because they were students of astrology. They were semi-serious. And when I would hear them talk astrology, I would think, what are they talking about? So I wanted to just check it out myself and see, is there anything to this? So my approach in the beginning was curiosity and skepticism, both. But within the first 6 months of reading books, the correlation to my own experience of life was so uncanny that I thought, is this for real? And how could this work? And it was astonishing to me. I would apply what I was reading to people I knew, to my family, and gradually the circle of people that I would sort of test astrology on grew. And then I studied. I had some great teachers. I had a professional astrologer in Atlanta, Rosemary Jones. She was a student of the famous Mark Edmund Jones, and she was my tutor. And then I had another tutor in Virginia Beach. But I studied for 6 years, and then I got my license to practice in Atlanta. You had to pass an exam back then to get a license to practice in Atlanta. Atlanta was one of the first cities to require that you pass a professional exam before you begin to practice professionally. And that was so I started, January 1976 was when I got my license to practice. And by 2 years later, by 1978, that's all I was doing was astrology at that point.
And it seemed to me when I met you, because you were in an office setting, it seemed very professional and almost like that you were really helping people in a more clinical way than somebody going to ask strictly about things that are personal. I don't know. I liked that.
Those are you're right, of course. And that was that was a deliberate choice, but I was also influenced strongly by people who were very professional and were really pioneers in the development of modern astrology. The astrology that I learned is really a person-centered astrology that was named Humanistic astrology by the great Dane Rujar, who borrowed that name deliberately from humanistic psychology. And it is very, humanistic astrology is very practical in the sense that you really work with people to discover the truth, And when you and I would have a session, it wasn't just me talking as if from some great position of authority. We had a meaningful conversation. And so I was taught how to have that kind of meaningful conversation. And I learned how to do that in the early years, how to really use the astrology as a way for personal growth, for self-discovery. And what could be more practical than knowing yourself? Because if you know yourself, you can make decisions that really suit you, and you can create a fulfilling life for yourself. And it's just that simple in terms of the approach that I've always had and the approach that I teach as well.
Well, and being that I met you, when I was in my early 30s, that, obviously I've changed a lot. I've come to discover myself, but that some of the things that you said to me back then are like little whispers. And I have found, so you were saying to me that the things that would nurture me, in what you told me in my 30s, I wasn't able to tap into that yet, or it hadn't come
That's
to me
because,
yet.
Sure, we grow into who we are. I mean, that's definitely true. So when I talk with someone, those whispers that you're referring to, my referencing your potential. When I look at a birth chart, which of course is it's a map it's a representation of the solar system when you were born. It's a symbolic representation. But when an astrologer looks at that, an astrologer is looking at your potential, what you have, what you could possibly develop. So sure, when you're young, for all of us, generally speaking, when you're young, there's a lot that you're still finding out about yourself, things that you're still discovering. And all of your life, there's a learning process. Honestly, I'm 71 years old. I'll be 72 this year. And
Looking good.
yeah, thanks. I'm learning things all the time. I think that life is, if you're not learning something, then something's wrong. Something is shut down in you. So the process of personal growth means that as you grow, you learn more, and it allows you to experience life more fully. The book that I wrote, The Soul Purpose, can be found on Amazon. It's easy to check out. And if you want to find out a little bit more about me and my life, you can go to my website, which I updated back in February. And it's davidrayleyastrologer.com. Just my name, David Railey, Railey, astrology.com. All right. And in many ways, this website is not about soliciting business. It's just a website about me and my life and my history and the kind of astrology that I've been practicing all of my adult life. And you can learn a little bit about, because there's a lot of pictures and photos and videos and so forth on there that I hope will be fun for you. So it's really a website to explore. You might want to make some popcorn and make some kind of drink and sit down and watch, because there's a lot of media on there. But it's kind of a fun website, really. And you get to see a lot of pictures of China and my students and founding a school here and what that's like, So I've been living an amazing adventure, and my website is a way of sharing that adventure with you.
That's so interesting about being young, because as you age, you look back at yourself and you're like, wow, I looked so great and I was so full of energy and I was so this, but it's almost like the joy of refining yourself and getting older is that, there aren't as many choices. You've already figured out a lot of the things that don't suit you or that you don't really like, and you're honing into things. At least for me, I've found that I'm pretty clear on what's soul killing for me now. And I tell my son that I really started to learn to connect to the feeling of things, of how did I feel when I did, drank too much, or how did I feel when I exercised, or how did I feel when I had a great evening with friends, or if I had success in business or something, and really staying closer to the feeling rather than the action. And
that is perfect. That's
a whole other subject. But when it doesn't feel right, it's easier for me to let go of it, I guess.
I hear you. And person-centered astrology. In let's say in a consultation, because there's different kinds of astrology. There's the kind of astrology I practice is not the only kind of astrology out there. There's all different kinds, but it's the kind that I learned, and it's what my experience is based on. But in a consultation, when the astrologer is interacting with the client, that is a very unique opportunity to explore and discuss things that you might never explore or discuss with anybody else, and I will always ask questions, and based upon what you're feeling. So the thread that I want to follow is when you talk about getting to know yourself emotionally, getting to know what are your true feelings on a deep level. That's what interests me, because that's what really motivates each of us. We're motivated by who we are on a feeling level much more than on a logical level. We may think we're making logical decisions, but usually we're not making logical decisions. We're making decisions based on our emotions, on our feelings. And if we can understand those feelings and emotions, wow, that just makes all the difference in terms of our ability to be more aware of what we're doing, more aware of the decisions we're making and why we're making them. And it's that use of astrology that, to me, is the most beneficial and the most practical, really.
But for me, what's really been confusing is the Myers-Briggs. I am in the category of only 20% of women, which is I'm a thinker, not a feeler. And so a lot of times, you know, my insides are telling me one thing, but my head is telling me another. And I find that that has been a struggle for me. My whole life is staying centered. And then when you listen to a lot of things, you know, on personal growth and mindfulness, they talk a lot about that voice inside not being that it's almost like you shouldn't listen to that voice, that voice isn't real. And so it's very confusing, all of this guiding, you know, through life and figuring out, are you making the right choices here and there? And I think that kind of will bring me back to your clients. And are most people coming to you to say, help me how to make the right turns? Or what are most people coming to you to say or ask?
In a general sense, it is to make sense of their life. You know, wherever they are, whether they're my age or in their 20s or 30s or 40s. I mean, my practice is, I feel so fortunate in my practice because I've really built relationships with my clients, like I have a relationship with you.
Right.
And a lot of my clients, of course, are my age or older, and their children, whom I, you know, knew since they were born, have become clients. And in some cases, you know, even grandchildren are now clients. So I've had this wonderful opportunity to get to know astrology through the family development, you know, because I can see, you know, how there's been this process of growth and evolution within a family, you know, and being a part of that journey, even if it's a client that which is pretty normal, that a client will see me once a year or maybe twice a year, you know, depending on what's going on in their life. But I've been part of that journey, and I can tell you that's an honor to have participated in that, you know, and especially it seems like that now looking back, you know, in terms of 46 years of practice. I mean, I don't know that your son will come to me as an astrologer. I don't know if that will happen. But
I'll make sure of it.
Well, no. It's only if he wants to. I mean, only if he's really genuinely curious and has a real need. You know, that's the key. You know, but that's what's happened to me in my practice. You know, is it's been based on building trusted relationships. You know, not dependent relationships. People are not dependent on me. They just come to me because they find that when we talk, when we interact, that they learn things or they remember things or they become more aware of things about themselves. And that's really where astrology, I think, is most useful as a kind of mirror to remind you of who you are, you know, particularly from a non-judgmental point of view. This is another critical aspect, or shall we say, important aspect of humanistic astrology, is that it's non-judgmental. In other words, person-centered astrology is not about telling you, you know, that you're, you know, that this is wrong and this is right and this is good and this is bad. This is not what I do. It doesn't interest me. It's more about just gaining understanding, just gaining awareness. Everybody comes in, they already have tons of judgments about themselves, you know, all kinds of critical mindsets already about themselves. They don't need another layer of that. You know, and so my approach is simply to hold that mirror up and let's see what happens. you know.
Well, like when you told me when I get in my head that I should get physical, I mean, that was just useful. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody processes their stress in a different way, but if I'm sort of sitting there in my feelings, I can't get them out. And it's sort of by being physical, it's like I'm thinking and I'm also being productive, and then there's a release. So I'm very curious
Yes.
because I've never been to Asia, but I know our cultures are so different. Do you strictly, do you have Chinese clients?
Not many. Most of my work here is teaching. I maintain my international practice through
Mm.
Skype, you know,
Hmm.
and so I talk to clients every day or 5 days a week. Um, and I love it because again, in fact, almost all my clients are people I've known for many years,
Hmm.
and I can't begin to tell you how exciting it is to see them. It's almost like, hi, how are you? We haven't talked in a year. It's great. So I came to China on a book tour,
Yeah, you
almost
wrote a book.
yeah, almost 12 years ago, actually, in the year of the tiger, which is the year that's coming up here. The Chinese New Year, starts in a little over a week, so it's going to be the year of the tiger again. But I came here because my book had been translated in Chinese, and the publishing company offered me a tour of China along with an advance and all that good stuff. And so I came over here not really knowing. I mean, I had some students here already that I was tutoring online and some people I was interacting with, but I didn't really know much about modern China. I knew a little bit about ancient China, but I didn't know much. I'd been trying to learn, but wow, when I came here, it was really astonishing, just the number of young people who were seriously interested in astrology. So the bookstores were packed, and many times, the owner of the bookstore would have to tell us all to leave. There'd be people lined up. I was signing books for hours, so that went on when I just first came to China. And then um, when I saw that there was really nothing here on an education level, there was no schooling, nothing, and that the level of knowledge of astrology was very uneven, very erratic. People had learned some things online, and so I I saw the need and began to teach, do some workshops, and then in cooperation with people I knew here, we founded a school, and the school now has been in existence for 11 years, depending on what you count as the start date, 10 years or 11 years. We officially started in the summer of 2011. And so the school grew. And in the beginning, I was still living in Atlanta. So I was going back and forth between Atlanta and China. And increasingly, I was spending more and more time here. Before I came here, I was perfectly happy. um, and if you had asked me in 2010, am I happy? Is my life fulfilling? I would have said, yeah, my life is great. I love astrology. I love what I do. I'm totally happy. I just didn't know that I could be happy in a different way, or maybe even more happy. I didn't know that was really possible. So that's what I found here. I found young people who really were searching, not only in terms of personal growth, but who really were searching to see if could they actually practice astrology? Could they do that? Is that possible?
But aren't
And
they,
so yeah, go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but aren't they more interested in astrology? I mean, I know there's feng shui, and they seem from a Westerner who's never been to Asia. So what do I know? But they seem, in business and personal, to be more open to that sort of thing. For their career and their personal life. Is that true?
Maybe in the most general sense, you could say that about Asia in general, but you could not say that about mainland China. No.
Mm.
Um, most of the traditions, the Chinese traditions, which have come back into China over the last 40 years, shall we say, most of those traditions were kept alive in Chinese communities that were outside of mainland China. And certainly all of that has come back and has reawakened in China over the last 40 years. But no, astrology has a very tenuous foothold in in modern China. You know.
Well, I mean, there's not everybody in America is doing it either. You know, I feel like there's always, well, my husband Jim's very open to this, and we've been to Sheila, who you trained.
Yeah.
And Sheila's also really an intuitive, so she's reading the chart, but she's also going on feeling, and you know, I love going to see her. I do use it a little bit in guidance too, but a part of it, you know, I'm always a little bit like, well, you know, a little skepticism, I guess I should say, and whereas Jim is like, it's facts, so. But that's why I love talking to you, because it feels very, you know, seated in facts or your studies, and that it's and in your book. So the soul purpose is
That's
the name
right.
of your book. I didn't know that you had written a book, and so again, that wraps back to you saying that you're sort of helping a person with their purpose through astrology. Is that?
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's about astrology from the standpoint of fulfillment, and like it says on the cover of the book, attaining fulfillment and security. But that's really what it's about, you know.
Well, and the times that I've spoken to you, I feel like you're saying to me, now, Sarah, for you to get this, and this is important to you, you need to do this and this, and feel like I need to speak to you more about staying on my path. I guess when you get to a certain age too, you start thinking like, I'm on the right path, right? I'm on the right path, you know, and being a mother for me has just really cemented, has always felt this is right for me. And I feel grateful that has felt so right for me. But other things in my life, I've never had that clarity as much as I've had in being a mom. But my son, who's a Cancer, and I'm a Scorpio, I really feel like I've known him before. It's just the easiest relationship I've ever had. So I think all of this work and trying to understand personalities, it's crucial. It's almost crucial to a good life.
Yeah, and particularly, I think modern astrology is well suited for the modern world and all the stresses that we deal with and all the things that can, you know, that can complicate our lives and make, you know, our decision making, you know, more troublesome. You know, just trying to figure out how to navigate through life, through marriage, through relationships, through family, through career, through everything. You know, and you know, I'm not saying astrology is for everybody, you know, because I'm not talking with you to sell astrology or even to sell me, because at this point I can just barely do what I'm doing, you know, in terms of, and I'm sort of semi-retired almost, really, despite the fact that I'm still working more hours than I should, I think. But I keep trying to figure out how to retire. I don't know that I ever will. But the point I'm making is that the astrology, if you are interested in discovering more about yourself, or just how to be more real with yourself, you know, the astrology that I practice and the astrology that I teach, and therefore is practiced by many others, will help you to do that. You know, so let's just say astrology, modern astrology, is an alternative counseling field, really, that it does use a certain model. It uses the model of the system we live in, which is our solar system. And it uses that model as a frame of reference about the person. but it's the person, not the chart. The chart is just a frame of reference. So it's the interaction with the person in a consultation that is exceptionally valuable. I mean, you can learn about yourself reading an astrology book. You could learn about yourself reading an astrology report, but there's nothing like the magic, if you will, in a consultation when an astrologer and client are really exploring what's going on, really trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. That process is a profound process, and it's one that I feel so lucky to have been a part of, all of my adult life. I'm David Railey, and I am the author of The Soul Purpose, a book that's based on the lunar nodes, something you probably never heard of. You probably think, what are the lunar nodes? What's that? But the book, The Soul Purpose, was written, I wrote it in 2003, and then rewrote it in 2008, 2009, and the second edition ended up being better than the first edition, and ended up actually being published in China, which is why I ended up being in China and founding a school here. But the book, The Soul Purpose, is about attaining fulfillment and security by understanding more what really drives you. In other words, on any given day or week, what are you seeking for fulfillment, and how do you secure yourself? It's about trying to find that balance, a more optimum balance between your search for fulfillment and your need for security. And the way the book is written, it's easy for you, if you don't know anything about astrology, it's easy for you to be able to read it and find out, because the tables that you would need to look yourself up in terms of, which one of these was I born with, it's easy to find out. So the book is really about that. It's an astrological approach to fulfillment in terms of life purpose, so hence the soul purpose. In other words, there's something in each of us on a deeper level that seems to drive us in a certain direction. What is that? What is that about? Do we share that with other people? So that's what the book's about. And it's based on my practice of astrology. It's not just a theory. It's based on, at this point, 46 years of practice when I wrote the book, 25, 30 years of practice at that time. So I hope you'll check it out and learn a little bit more about yourself that you can use in a practical way in your life.
To get a divorce or a career change or whatever, through reading your chart, do you typically try to help them navigate through that based on their chart? Is it like, okay, you're here, and if you want to get here, because I don't think I ever came to you really like, help me with this, but just, right. And now that I understand what you do even more, I'm more curious to speak to you based on, understanding myself a little bit more. But is that a process that people come to you in crisis, or?
Sure. People will come to me in crisis, but you understand, I don't, like it says on my website, it's somewhere on the website, I don't even take new clients anymore. I make the exception except for family members,
Oh, wow.
Keep it in the family, So, I would say in the early half, maybe half to 2/3 of my practice, there were more people who might have a first session when they're going through a difficult time in their life, whether it's whatever it might be, But and certainly I help. I talk with people when they're dealing with all the things that we go through in life, um, the loss of a loved one, or divorce, um, family crisis, you name it. As an astrologer, I try to be there with them to help them make sense out of what they're going through, to help them understand what it might mean. Because at the end of the day, it's about what did it all mean. If you have someone who's very successful, let's say they've made a lot of money or whatever, and they've been very successful, and they reach a point in their life and they look around them, and they say, well, what did it all mean? You know, if you know what it means or have an idea of what it means way before that time in your life, it makes a difference in everything you do. It makes a difference in the way you interact with the people you love, the way you live your life, the way you embrace the moment. If you can embrace the moment with more awareness about who you are, wow, your life really opens up to you.
I mean, a lot of times we're doing things really unconsciously too. We don't know why we're driven to do certain things. A lot of time I imagine we're proving something, to a parent that didn't think we could do it, or whatever the story is. But, it's interesting that especially for, men in their careers who are very driven, I'm sure it can be confusing because society says, you're a success if you've made money. But then, as you talked about, a lot of men, and Alison Armstrong, I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She wrote the book, The Queen's Code, and she talks about how men go through this stage in their 40s. Often they'll have affairs or buy the car or do this, that, and the other. And they're asking themselves, is this it? Is this, I thought the big house and the pretty wife and the 4 kids and the Porsche would make me happy, and I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? And then that's typically like a stage like we would describe for toddlers, which I thought was fascinating because it's just a stage that that we all go through, just different degrees, of course. Some people can, throw their whole life away and make a total mess of it, and other people will just maybe be slightly troubled at that time in their lives. So
sure.
I think it's interesting to find out what's driving you and all of that. Well, I don't want to keep you too long because I know people don't like to listen to podcasts go forever.
I haven't finished my coffee yet, but
but I guess what I think would be interesting for listeners to hear. Are there people in particular, or is there a way to find an astrologer that one could trust?
I would say when it comes to a referral, you want to know, it's all about trust. If you're going to go see an astrologer, you want to see someone who has some experience and some credentials. And by credentials, I mean, where did they study astrology? How long did they study astrology? In the world today, there are many different ways of becoming a legitimate professional astrologer. For example, you might get what's called the ESAR CAP and become a certified astrological professional, which is a whole professional program that you go through that includes testing and so forth. The school that we have in China, we are an ESAR affiliate school, and ESAR, which is the International Society for Astrological Research, they have affiliate schools all over the world. Ours is one of them. And we have a program that helps people, prepares people to go through that certification process. But there's a lot of other places. For example, in the United States, there's Astrology University, which is mostly an online college, but really good. I think they have a wonderful program. But there are schools all over the world in astrology. So I would say if you're looking for an astrologer, not only talk with your friends about what their experience was, what was it like when you went to the astrologer, if it's a referral, but what is their background? Where have they studied? What kind of astrology do they practice? Are they just going to tell you what's going to happen in your life? Are they more of a fortune telling style? You know, so you know what to expect. So it's important to do a little research before you just decide to go in and have a session.
And do you feel like the length of how somebody that they really have studied it and gone to school, or do you feel that some people can do it on their own and have, like Sheila, for example, who worked with you and she trained under you?
Mentoring's fine.
Right. Yeah. Because I thought, I've really enjoyed her. And of course, I started out by working with you, but then she opened the place in Buckhead, and I went to the, up to see some of the people that worked for her. And it was interesting.
And the bottom line is, of course, trusting yourself. In other words, if you go in to see an astrologer, even if they have, been recommended to you, you know what's true about yourself and what isn't. You know what feels right and what doesn't. And that will tell you whether or not it was really, you want to go back to that astrologer or not. Mm-hmm. Depends on what if you go in and you're like, I just didn't connect with this person. I didn't connect with them. Well, that's not the person for you. You got to find somebody, that you connect with, and someone that you trust, and someone that's really interested in you. The astrology, when you go in for a session, it's not about the astrologer. It's about you. How did you feel? What did you get from it? That's really the key.
And I'm curious. I've never asked this, but does it, when you meet with somebody such as yourself, they say, when were you born? Where were you born? What time were you born? Why is that so relevant? Where you were born and the time?
Because that goes into the construction of the chart. In other words, the chart is set up from the perspective of the city you were born in. So the latitude and longitude is just part of the technical necessity of being able to construct an actual chart, because the chart is a geocentric view, in other words, an Earth-centered view of the solar system from where you were born.
So if I was born in Europe versus the United States, I would be a little different?
Probably. You'd probably speak French.
But I just always find that interesting, like, wow, because I was born at 7 o'clock at night versus 7 o'clock in the morning. But and that figures into the chart when you're calculating everything.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay. So when are you coming back to Atlanta? Because this podcast is Sarah Styles Your Life, the Southeast. So we kind of branched up a little bit. You are in China, which
I'm a Southerner. I'm a Southerner. I may have lived other places, but I was born in Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta. I'm a Southerner, in that sense. Even though I lived in LA for a while, as you know, and so forth. And now I'm a resident of China. I live in Beijing, and I have a residency visa. But I will come back to the U.S. when it's safe. And part of the problem right now is because of the zero tolerance policy here in China. If I did manage to get a flight to the U.S., which would be difficult since all those flights right now have been shut down, but if I would not be able to get back in easily, because they're not allowed right now. They're not allowing any flights in from the U.S. So once the world becomes a little safer and this pandemic is history and we can all reminisce about the good old days, then sure, I can't, I'll be visiting Atlanta and actually traveling other places too. I'm sure everybody right now has a travel list of places that they want to go that they haven't been able to go. I certainly have my travel list, don't you?
Of course. I've been trying to go to Italy for like 2 years, and it's been sad because travel is something that really lights me up. So I can't do the same thing over and over and over again and be happy. Some people actually like the routine of life and like things being smaller. I was fine the first few weeks that we were locked down because, of course, I'm such a doer. I'm like, oh, could do all these things around the house, and it was nice to have the dinners and stuff with the kids. But I really feel sorry for the kids every time they go to school with the mask on their face, and they really are handling it well. But I hope we can get through this soon. It feels for me like it's winding down. So.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we can get some good news maybe this spring about from the medical establishment, some of the research they've been able to do that will guide us and help us when it comes to dealing with this whole series of viruses, all of the related COVID type viruses. I'm hoping that we can get some good news that will help us have more hope and optimism about the future, because that's what we need,
Right.
I've been particularly, I know you don't want to go down this road and we're wrapping up here, but it's been painful, really, to be in China and watch what's happened to the U.S. It's been really dismaying, and deeply troubling and sad to see so many people suffering in the way they have, in the last 2 years. I got to say that's been really hard to watch, and people I know there that have been through difficult times. So we're all hoping that becomes something that we've learned something from and can begin to move ahead and with more wisdom in terms of how we operate in the future. Just reduce stress levels. That's the main thing. I have to say that. I have to add that to the conversation. We need to lower the stress levels in the United States, and in certainly maybe in the Western world, but especially in the U.S. People were stressed a lot before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic was on top of all the other stresses that are there. People need to feel safe in their life, at least reasonably safe. So if we can lower the stress levels, and people will make better decisions. People make bad decisions.
Well, we moved really quickly in this country, and for me, I'm outsider looking, just at seeing my nation and my community. I thought, if this isn't a sign to everybody that you have to take care of your body, you have to worry about your immune system, you have to worry about your stress, because this isn't going to be there's always health risks that are coming around, and you really need to take care of yourself. And if you're not getting enough sleep, and you're living on fast food, and you're just such a magnet for disease. And not that everybody brings everything on them, but I do feel happy that people are paying more attention to meditation, and I certainly have been trying to ground myself more and taking just a little bit of time for myself. But it's hard. I'm a typical American. I get up, I get on my phone, I get to the kids, and then I get my coffee, and then I'm rolling. And then I realize, oh, wait a second. I didn't take the time for myself. And then it builds. And then you don't do it for a few days, and then a mess. And then you always have to go back and, because for me personally, I'm such an A type of person, and I do suffer with a lot of stress and fear, internal fear, not like fear of COVID, fears from childhood that just bubble up or whatever, that if I don't do that for myself, I'm no good to anybody. So I'm glad that our country does seem to be, obviously maybe not as a nation as a whole is into mindfulness, but in my community, I feel like most of my peers were trying to a little bit. It's hard to be as disciplined as one needs to be, but I think it's important. Well, I hope to be able to see you when you come to Atlanta next.
Sarah, I'll let you know for sure. I'll let everybody know when I'm finally able to come back, for at least a couple of weeks.
Well, and you're such a talent, and I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. It just really has thrilled me to be able to speak to you. So, is there anything else that you want to add so the listeners can hear?
Only that, just to be open-minded about the modern astrology that has developed over the last 100 years, particularly over the last 50 years, and to see it as an alternative type of counseling that is a part of the therapeutic community.
Mm.
You know, it's an alternative therapy, but it is part of the community, and it can help and contribute to everyone who, wants to participate. That's basically it,
I think it's true. I like it all, and I feel like it's just, it's all part of the experience of growing into more of who you authentically are.
Right.
But you're such a great person. You've really been in my heart through a lot of the big choices in my life, the biggest being my son. So I really appreciate, and I'm going to get your book.
Great. Sarah, I appreciate you too very much.
Well, I think we're going to say goodbye, and
All right.
have a great day. I'm about to go to bed, and you're about to start your day. So
Yes,
right now, are you ahead of me? Is it Friday there?
That's
Or is
right. It's now 9:29 in the morning in Beijing. Yeah.
But it's Friday, not Thursday.
That's right. Friday.
Yeah, so you're ahead of me.
I'm 13 hours ahead of you right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Woo.
So, all right.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Bye.
再
Have a great
见，
day.
再见，
Bye.
新年快乐 ，Happy New Year.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye bye.